special here? Nope. All right. We're live streaming at this time and also recording this for LMS. Yeah, leadership management systems.
For you guys that have microphones on the table, don't freak out. The only time those come on is when we actually see or read out questions on the slide up here, or when we ask for questions. That's the only time it's going to be on.
So you're here to learn how to conduct an accident, injury, incident investigation. I like to use the word injury so that we just don't mix words. An injury is an injury. It's not an accident. It's what it is. And I don't like to mix words on that. So let's look at this for a minute. Everybody know who Usain Bolt is? Bolt. World's fastest man. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's quite interesting. So let's watch.
Adesso invece è il primo degli umani. Tanto vediamo lo scalzo. Ah, mamma mia! No, questo poi è pazzesco. Zoppica un po', è stato investito dalla cameraman, queste sono riprese non della regia internazionale ma della... Adesso invece è il primo degli umani. Tanto vediamo lo scalzo. Ah, mamma mia! No, questo poi è pazzesco. Zoppica un po', è stato investito dalla cameraman, queste sono riprese non della regia internazionale.
So was that, whose fault was that? Is there a fault there? Is it Beijing's fault? Is it the cameraman's fault? What's going on there? So think about that as we go along in this presentation. Okay? And we'll go over this and we'll do a root cause analysis on that incident that happened at the Olympics. Okay? So think about that. So what we're going to learn here today is what is an accident or an incident, for ease of terms, an accident, injury. Is something, an accident results in an injury. An incident is something that doesn't necessarily result in an injury, but it's serious. And if we don't investigate incidents, we may have more accidents. And why should you investigate both? Okay. How do you find the true cause? Any ideas on that?
Questions? Investigate.
Investigating. How should you investigate? That's the other thing I'm going to learn today. And then what should be the result of that investigation? Could be a change in policy, change in procedures, change in equipment, change in training. So, come on. All right. What else? So what is an accident? It's an unplanned event. It's a controllable event. And it disrupts your work process, doesn't it? What happens when we have an accident incident at Franklin? Everything stops. Okay? And when everything stops, we don't make any money. But most would agree that an accident is unplanned and unwanted. But do you agree that they are preventable? Have we ever had an accident or incident here that is not preventable? Oh well, it just happens. Don't know what to do. It's always going to happen. This is a tough crowd. All right, you guys have got to get in the game. Otherwise, it's going to be a really quick meeting when we talk. So the idea that an accident control might be foreign to you. You know, oh, it's just an accident. It's an act of God. It's one of those things. You know, even in a hurricane, we get hurricanes in Idaho, right? That's an OSHA 30 thing that was going on there. So in the case of a weather event, you shouldn't have any injuries if you have an emergency response plan, right? So you should be able to get shelter and protect yourself in an emergency like that, as long as you have a plan. So those acts of God shouldn't result in injuries or deaths. Okay? See these pyramids a lot. Heinrichs, pyramid, for every 300 near misses, you have 29 injuries and 1 fatality type thing. Same thing applies here. So the more hazardous condition you have, the more close calls you get, the more minor injuries, severe injuries, fatalities. If we can take this line and cut it like this, cutting these down, then you might not have that fatality. We need to show that in a better way. But your injuries can be preventable or can be predictable if we do job hazard analysis and things like that. And they are preventable if we do the right training, have the right processes, pay attention to the owner's manuals on equipment, leave the guards in place, stuff like that. So what is an unplanned, unwanted event? Disrupts work. So what happens in this case? You have a box, 50 pounds, 50? Yeah, 50-pound carton falls from 12 feet, lands on the ground. Doesn't hit anybody. Guy looks behind him and says, oh well, it fell. I didn't get hurt, no big deal, right? What happens? Should that be investigated?
Yes.
And in that, it says here, wake up call. That's why it should be investigated. Because we have to figure out why that fell. That's 50 pounds from 12 feet, and if you do the velocity thing, it's going to hit you hard. I'm not going to go through any math here. So we should investigate why that happened. That's why you have toe kicks on handrail. That's why you have handrail. That's why you have, is your shelving adequate? Okay. So it's not just one of those things. And we've had that here. We've had an investigation for a near miss or a first aid injury, and they looked at it and said, I don't know how we could prevent that. So that tells me this is always going to happen. Every week, every month, every 90 days, we're going to have an injury like this because we can't prevent it. Every injury is preventable. Okay? They are predictable and preventable events. They don't have to happen. And that's why we're here, is to find out how to investigate those so that they don't happen. So, by accidents, we mean events where employees are killed, maimed, injured, or ill through exposures. Okay? So if we have a systematic plan to prevent those, then they should never happen. Can everybody agree with that? Yes. I need to bring candy bars or something for those who answer. There's muffins.
How about handouts?
So let's take that 50-pound carton. This time it falls off that top shelf, falls 12 feet, and hits somebody. Was that predictable? It's already happened. So it is predictable. Is it preventable?
Absolutely.
Yes. So investigating why the carton fell the first time without an injury prevents an injury from happening in the future. So we've seen the iceberg in the cost of injuries. Okay, above the water is all the direct cost of an injury. Below the water is the indirect cost of the injury. Here you have the same thing. The accidents are up here. But below the water level is where all the incidents happen. That's where all these near misses go on. We have some that really do a good job at identifying near misses, and some don't. And identifying near misses, close calls, whatever you want to call them, we can prevent the accidents from happening. So investigating those incidences have that potential of preventing injuries or accidents. How many investigate incidences? How many investigate first aid cases? Okay. We have a sliver Are you going to investigate a sliver?
Should.
Yeah.
Okay. We had one that happened this week, and the sliver went in somewhere in right here. The next day, the guy couldn't move his thumb. He is in emergency surgery last night because he has nerve damage caused by a sliver. So don't take slivers lightly. Okay, we get a lot of slivers. We're in the lumber business. Handle things by hand. Okay, fair warning. There's going to be a policy coming out about cut-resistant gloves, but they don't solve the sliver problem yet. You know, that's one of those things that went pretty deep and it hit a nerve. And so he had surgery last night to correct it. All because of the sliver. Well, it was not that long. So it went pretty deep. That's why we should be tracking those things, saying, what can we do about this on the first aid cases? Okay? I send out a report on all the cases we have. Hopefully you're using that data. If not, let me know. I'll quit doing it because it takes a while to put together. Okay? The accident weed. I always say there's hazardous conditions and there's hazardous activities. Okay? Posed a question earlier this year that next year we ought to look towards zero hazardous activities. Is what we need. Zero accidents, zero injuries. You know, if we can eliminate the activities that cause those, it's a lot easier to get to zero. But hazardous conditions is the missing guard, poor housekeeping, creating trip hazards, defective tools. Why do we have the defective tools? We have to ask those questions. No SDSs, sorry, that M needs to go out of there. No SDSs, so that we have to know what chemicals we're using. Then you look down here. This is why you have hazardous conditions. You have poor work procedures or no work procedures. How many of you grew up and they had you earlier in your career and you were told to go operate a forklift? Here's the up and down, here's the shift, forward and reverse. Now go unload that truck. That was the training I got. You know, I didn't get forklift training for about 10 years after I learned how to run a forklift. Okay? I learned a lot in that training, like how not to tip it over. Poor safety management. There's your lack of training. Those all relate to the hazardous conditions. Over here, you have hazardous practices. And us as managers and safety coordinators and safety professionals need to look at those hazardous practices. Do we allow horseplay? Jocularity. I was at a potato harvester manufacturer, and we had this satellite operation that was paint operation. Sent all this equipment up the road about 50 miles to paint. Well, when they take the tape off, roll it in the ball, because it's easier to throw away. But it's also easy to throw it at each other. And the guy got hit in the eye with a ball of tape and had to have surgery. You know, almost lost his eye. So you don't allow those horseplay things. They ignored safety rules. When is it okay to ignore a safety rule?
Never.
Okay.
It's not.
It's not okay to ignore a safety rule.
Is it okay for the manager to let his employees ignore safety?
That's the other one. And what does the employee do when he knows that the manager is ignoring safety rules? Is he afraid to speak up?
Probably.
Probably. That's unfortunate. We should have an open communication on that. We should be open to those criticisms, is what they would be considered by a manager. But did not report a hazard, don't know how. We spend a lot of time, the GM talk about to the new employees saying, you have to, you need to, you have a responsibility to report unsafe conditions. They'll let us know so we can correct them. I mean, we can't be everywhere as managers. We can't see everything. Even safety coordinators can't see everything. We rely on employees to report that back to us. Okay? Why would we purchase unsafe equipment? Why would we have a lack of supervision? We do have a lack of supervision at times. Look how many installed sales. Dustin, you got installed sales. Who else does installed sales? You know, fireplace. You guys, granted, you're going out into the world, sending 2 guys, maybe 3 guys into a truck to go to somebody's house and install something. They're unsupervised. But if you provide enough training, you shouldn't have any issues there, right? All right, is everybody comfortable with their crews going out? I know a place that's not. That's having some difficulty right now. What about the rules not being enforced? You gotta look at those. You know, I go back to when is it okay to break the rules? Never. Okay. Poor safety leadership. I grew up in that. And I'm sure some of you also have, where the supervisor says, "Oh, get back to work. You don't need gloves. You don't need respirators. You don't need this stuff. You'll only be a couple minutes out there." Ask the guy on Evergreen out of Soda Springs when he sent the guy into the cyanide tank without respirator, without a confined space permits, without checking the atmosphere. To the kid, 15, 16-year-old kid, who now is still has brain damage, will never live a full life. The guy got sent to jail for doing that, and rightly so. He died in prison, by the way. That happened in 1998, 97 in Soda Springs, Evergreen Environmental. So these are root causes. We'll get to the root causes here. Bear with me, okay? That we have on there. Any questions so far? Anybody got any questions? Are you bored to tears? Question? No.
Is there a place to get this, these handouts?
We need to get 3 more over here.
I can go make copies if you need me to.
I think we have enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
I didn't know how many we had, but yeah, I can get you some more,
Oh.
and I'll get those into Chrome.
Yeah.
Chrome.
I'll post them in front of us. Thank you.
So, in the injury investigation, one of the tools that we use is a root cause analysis. Anybody have an idea what a root cause analysis is?
Why did it happen?
Why did it happen?
Factors.
What are the factors that led to this injury or this incident? Any other ideas on root cause analysis? Let's go back to this. You've got to find out this stuff here. It's like pulling weeds. If you don't pull the root out, you're always going to have a problem. This is always going to happen. You're always going to have weeds up above if you don't get the root all the way out. That's why we do root cause analysis, to pull that root. So we look at the direct causes. Is it horseplay? Is it lack of guarding? Is it lack of procedure? Go back to that again. Is it equipment failure? Didn't report the hazard, didn't report the incidences before? Is this cultural? Those are some of the practices or the causes. So what is the root cause of it? So root cause analysis is a systematic technique for finding out why this. The root cause is the cause that, if corrected, if you do this root cause analysis and apply what you do in finding that root cause, you should prevent any future incidents, injuries, accidents from happening. The root cause of consequence is basic underlying cause that was not in turn caused by more important underlying causes. So when you do a root cause analysis, we like to find why. It's simple, it's easy. We'll get into that. But there may be multiple causes of that injury, or that accident, or that incident. Basic question, you got it on the 5 whys. Basic question is, what caused this? This is, like I said, this is really simple to do. There's all sorts of fishbone diagrams and analysis that you can do, that you have to have a PhD in order to monitor it and implement it. But the root cause analysis is very simple. So the guy doesn't come to work, calls you up, says, "I can't come to work." Why not? My car won't start. What do you ask? Any questions? Any answers? Why won't it start? The battery is dead. Why is the battery dead? The alternator is not functioning properly. Next question.
Get rid of the piece of crap in my little.
Get way ahead of it. What was your?
That's the solution.
That's a
Why
solution.
is the alternator not functioning?
Why is the alternator not functioning? The belt was broke. Why was the belt broken? The alternator belt was well beyond its useful service life. It had probably 120,000 miles on that belt. It should have been replaced at 50.
So why did
I've been there. So why did that happen? I have not been maintaining my car according to the recommended service schedule. So there's your root cause. If you would follow the checklist, remember checklists keep us human, reminds us that we are human. Why are airline crashes, big jets with hundreds of people on it, why are those crashes in the news? Because they very seldom happen because of checklists. You know, you have a pilot and a co-pilot going through that checklist. Flaps, yeah, they work. You know, they go back down. We have checklists here at times, and I wonder if we're just swagging the numbers. Yeah, I did it, did it. You know, that type of thing. You really have to go through the checklist. My daughter was in the Marine Corps and worked on F-18s, $18 million jets. Okay, and she was a plane captain. I mean, she was responsible for maintenance on that jet until she handed it over to the pilot. So when the pilot came to fly his jet, it was her jet. And then they walked through and did that checklist and made sure that everything worked. And then she handed it over, saluted the captain, pilot, commander, whatever, whoever was flying it. And then she stood at attention while he went through it again. Okay, we're talking an $18 million jet. With only one person at risk, him. So you look at the airline industry, you got 2 pilots, maybe 3, navigator, and hundreds of people on that plane. So you got to make damn sure that things are right. So how do we equate that to an overhead door? And you have to use a checklist to make sure that everything's going right on hanging that overhead door for that customer. Because that customer wants to make sure that if his little child walks through there, the sensors work, things like that. We don't want to be involved in that. So that's why we use checklists in those installations, right? Who uses checklists? Perfect. Like to see it. Benefits of asking 5 whys. Simple. It's kind of hard to do. You know, you get to the first why. Oh, that's good. We're done. He was stupid. We'll go on. So, you know, we can't do that. It's effective because we can identify that root cause. It's comprehensive. When you ask one why, sometimes you get 2 answers. And we'll go through a couple of those. We have some case studies here. Flexible, it's engaging. If you keep on asking the whys until you have no more answers, then you get the root cause. And it's not expensive to do. Okay? You don't have to go buy a program. You don't have to have it on the system. It's pretty simple. Who's got, hold up the 5 why thing. There's an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it's really easy to put together. And you can write on it. So why do we investigate? Get back to that question. Why happen again? Keep it from happening again. Prevent future incidents. You read my. Okay. Identify and eliminate hazards. How many hazards do we have around here? Lots of them. How many forklifts do you have in Boise? Lot? 20?
Too many.
Every one of those is a hazard. Every forklift out there is a hazard. Every truck is a hazard. If you're not properly training people and looking at those incidents as go on. Expose deficiencies in processes. What does that mean? Any ideas? Have we exposed some deficiencies in our processes in the last couple of years?
Absolutely.
safety training, we realized that we were short on what we were doing for our safety, and so we went after chasing that, figuring out what we needed to do, and did it.
Okay, yeah, I'll pick on Twin Falls. I always pick on Twin Falls. We had a guy that was installing pallet racking, and he fell. Boy, he climbed down, tripped over, had a housekeeping issue, sprained his ankle with that. The question was posed to him, what did you do before you started at Franklin? What was your job experience? I worked at the GameStop in the mall. That was his answer. He was probably 19. What was really scary was a month ago he didn't know how to run a forklift, and this month he was running a forklift, and he worked at GameStop before. I said, have you ever been to a lumber yard? This is from Levi. Levi taught me this one. Have you ever been to a lumber yard with your dad? Nope. I didn't go any further than that on that one, but I said, have you ever been to Home Depot? Have no reason to go to Home Depot. So he had zero exposure to hazards associated with lumber yard. None whatsoever. And then a month later, after hiring him, he's on a forklift. Are we making sure that they're properly trained? And that's why we get into this. We're training people. Another one is hearing conservation program. We're making sure that those who are exposed to high decibels of noise are being protected. And we're monitoring. High vis. High vis is another one. High vis. Fair warning, bugs are coming out. Got resistant gloves. So that's what the process is in equipment. And we identify equipment that we need to upgrade. Yes. Trailers, yeah, totally in the trailer pack. You know, now why did that happen? Why did we find out that we needed to do that on bumper pull trailers?
When it came off.
Fruit when it came off. Acid truck.
Wow.
and that very week up above Idaho Falls, the same thing happened, but that trailer hit another truck on the road. So we were fortunate that we didn't do that, but the thing was, we never gave due diligence to the trailers. DOT trailers, the fleet, different story. I mean, you're checking air brakes, you have qualified drivers, you have all this stuff, checklists going through, making sure that those big trucks are good, but we ignored the little trucks until it was almost too late. Now, yes, sir.
How many, when you reflect on just the investigations over the last, year, 18 months, how many of them at the end of the day come down to housekeeping? And when you're doing the 5 why and you get down to, your example with vehicle, with the dead battery, right? That's a housekeeping matter. Someone just being proactive, attentive to the environment, attentive to their equipment, etc. How many of them come down to housekeeping? Just your rough guess. Is it a small percentage, the vast majority, 50-50?
I'm going to say at least 50-50, if not 60-40. A lot of it is that. And what I have found is those facilities that have very good housekeeping system, Sawtooth would be one, have almost virtually no injuries. Does that answer?
From the stuff that I've seen, reading each of those investigations, and I guess it'd be interesting to go back and look at those, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's over 90% of them. That we make this a lot harder than it has to be. That at the end of the day, when you go through the causation analysis and you're looking for the but-for causation, that what you end up arriving at is poor housekeeping. No one looked at the trailer. No one checked the ball. No one looked at the electrical panel until there was an issue. Whatever it is. I mean, you just time and time and time and time again. And that's how people get, hurt with a knife. They use a dull knife. Why is it a dull knife? Because no one sharpens knives. Right? So they overuse the tool. Mm-hmm. It's only designed to be used when it's sharp, and most often get cut. So those type of things where you didn't, put the gloves on all these little things that come down to housekeeping that are kind of so easy to dismiss, but at the end of the day, just are easy to be attentive to actually.
And housekeeping is not just sweeping up the area. Housekeeping is more involved in that. Housekeeping is controlling your environment.
Right, if you're attention to your environment, you're out there every day.
I'm watching this camera going.
You're gonna see how fast you can get.
Live TV, yeah, it was wonderful. Reduce injury and worker compensation costs. It's not right to hurt people. Just plain isn't right. Okay, and we're causing that through our conditions and things like that by not having proper training, proper equipment, things like that. Shame on us. Okay. The worker compensation cost. We are owner operators. We are employee owners. So I'll get it the right one. So, anybody want to guess how much our premium is? By the way, this is Tim Carney from Alaska National. He's our risk manager. He's going to assist in the case studies. No, it's close to $1 million a year. I'm appalled that it's $1 million a year. It should be $400,000, if that. But he's had a bad track record, so we need to get back on track on that. And that's why we do this. And workers' compensation looks at what we're doing today in training you guys in injury investigation and finding root causes, and they look favorably on this. Maintain worker morale. Who wants to work for somebody who's going to tell you to go in that cyanide tank without any PPE? What's our employee morale right now with our safety program? You think it's pretty good? Pretty high? I'm not being convinced by you guys, so is it good? I don't know. Or do some of the people think that the safety is not for the pain?
I think it's location specific, mostly.
Yes. Location specific. Specific.
The people that think it's important, it's very good morale. People that don't, it's bad.
I can usually tell when I show up to a facility whether they're happy to see me or not. Especially if I'm doing a mock OSHA inspection, which by the way, you guys are on the list. So yeah, it's important that our workers feel safe, that they feel that we're doing the right things. I think one of the things that with Wendell and Russ doing what they do with the new employee training, that goes a long ways to these new guys, especially those who worked at the GameStop before coming here. So, okay. All right. Conduct and document an investigation that answers the following. Who was present? Okay, now we're getting into the meat of it. Who was at that scene? What activities were occurring? What happened? You know, the overall view. Where, what time? Why did it happen? You need to ask some of those questions on the surface. And then from there we get into the root cause. So the example is an employee gets cut. What's the cause? It is not just the saw or knife or the sharp nail. It was a broken tool or was or that nobody reported. Maybe the guard was left off with the nail gun. Maybe it was disabled, the safety feature on the nail gun. Did somebody ignore the hazard because of lack of training? Well, you never told me about that. Or do you have a policy that discourages reporting? I sometimes wonder, you know, if that happens. Oh, you're okay. You don't need to report that. You know, I remember those days. I remember a boss coming in one time and says, I need to send these guys out on job. I said, they've been working 10 hours already today. And he same guy looked at me and said, well, we've been doing pretty good on our injury rates. We can afford a couple of injuries. That was pretty disappointing. Also answer, is this a company or industry recognized hazard? So, I know OSHA's a 4-letter word, but OSHA has the big four, focus four. You know, fall protection, machine guarding, these type of things that they really concentrate on. We've been subject to 2 of those in local emphasis program inspections when we passed, which was great, fantastic. But so is it a industry-wide problem? I tell you what, splinters are in the lumber business. They are happening. Why? Is it the quality of wood has gone down? Or is it the quality of the workers gone down? Or is it the quality of the management has gone down? Why are we having so many splinter hazards? By the way, splinter-resistant gloves are expensive. I've been looking at puncture-resistant gloves, I should say. They're pretty pricey. Has the company taken previous action to control this action? So that's I read in, I guess it was Google last night, where a New Jersey firm, and it was machine guarding, and it had the 3rd incident where they haven't put the guards back on the machines or maintained their guards. They got a $400,000 fine from OSHA for doing it. So that is a repeat hazard. We need to investigate these things so we don't have repeat hazards. And what are those actions to control that hazard? Need to write those down. Is it a training issue? Sometimes it is. Sometimes people are just thrown out there and not going through the training. So when we investigate, we have to develop a plan, assemble an investigation kit. I'll go over that on what that looks like. It looks like this. This is really the good investigation kit right now. The only thing it doesn't have just everything: flashlight, camera, tape measures sometimes, things like that. But cell phones, they do a lot for you. Investigate all incidences and accidents immediately, as soon as possible. Why do you do that?
Fresh in your mind.
Fresh in your head. Witnesses are still around. The scene hasn't been contaminated, depending on the scene. Collect facts. Okay. I'll get into that, but make sure it's all factual information. And interview witnesses. So, and then write the report. The report comes later. Let's just get all this stuff in while it's still fresh. Developing a plan. We'll outline those plans, the who, what, and where of what's going on. So your plan, who's to be notified first?
Supervisor.
Supervisor. Then you send it up the chain, up the flagpole. Let me know about those things. How to notify outside agencies. We'll go over that here in a little bit. And who will conduct the internal investigation? We have it set up that I send out an email to Levi, Rick, and the 3 regional managers and John Hinshaw when there was a compensable injury, and one of those folks, including me, will assist in that investigation. But it should be run by the safety coordinator and the manager of that department. Okay. We're just there to help. It's kind of like, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. I'm from corporate and I'm here to help. So,
Let me just say something about that. So the reason that we participate in those is because somebody got hurt. Something went wrong. Somebody's not in the same condition when we went out. And it's serious. It's a commitment we've made to our employees, and so that's why we're there. We're there to make sure that the managers and the safety coordinators know how to investigate and are conducting a thorough investigation, so we learn and we don't repeat that mistake. That's why we're there. It's not something that's just getting delegated and we just kind of see a spreadsheet at the end of the day. That's not personal. That's not doesn't put us face to face with the issue or the person affected. So that's why Mike or the regional or John or Rick or I that's in those is to make sure that we stay close to what's happening and we don't forget that this is affecting an individual. It may be for all intents and purposes a minor effect or maybe a major. But at the end of the day, we fail to live up to our expectations, have somebody go home in the same or better condition than they were.
We're not there to do this. That's not why we're there. Pre-plan, who to notify, who will conduct the internal investigation. You might want to develop a flow chart to show the major components of the program. That's all pre-administrative stuff there. What level of training is needed? That's why you're here today. Okay, on how to conduct an investigation. So, let me go through that. A couple of years ago, I received the notes on an investigation, and it was, this guy's been with us a fairly long time. He's a good guy. I doubt if this will happen again. And that was it. It's like, okay, that didn't tell me anything. You know, that's not a true investigation. So whoever investigated that did not have any training, did not have an idea of what was going on. We needed to get better than that, because I don't know if that would prevent an injury from happening. It's not. You know, it's unfortunate that that guy, who's a good guy, got hurt. But how do we prevent that from happening to another good guy? So, who receives the reports? Send them all to me. You guys can keep those, put them in files. You know, that's fine. But I keep a ledger on everybody. Who decides what corrections will be taken and when? I see Trent. Trent makes a lot of those corrections. Juan does. I'm looking at managers for that. Safety coordinators make all sorts of recommendations and push them, but you know, the buck stops with the managers. They've got to make those decisions. And by the managers making those decisions, then the right decisions on that, it shows that we're serious about safety. Who writes report and performs follow-up? Okay. I always, whenever I get something like that, it says in 30 days, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. I put that in my calendar. I follow up. Have you done X, Y, and Z yet? You know, show me pictures. How is it going? So, who will be trained to investigate? That's why we're here today. Safety coordinators and department managers should be trained to investigate injuries. Who's responsible for the finished report? And what is the time frame? Time frame is as soon as possible on the finished report. The investigation is immediate. I'm probably hitting the elbow pretty fast here, if not Bryce, because of one that happened yesterday. Who receives the copies of the report? Where do they go? Who determines which recommendations will be implemented? Any ideas on that? I'll make recommendations, but I don't hold purse strings. Okay, you got to look at these things. You know, it's got to be economical as well as effective. Okay, you don't want to go out spending thousands and thousands of dollars and not have something effective. Okay? Who's responsible for implementing the recommendations? That would be whoever you decide as a manager, whoever you decide to make sure they're happy.
Shouldn't that be everybody?
Yeah, in a sense, I'd agree with that. Let me ask you this: what do you mean by everybody? Everybody in your department?
Everybody involved with the entire yard. Okay. I mean, if you're wanting to implement something, I tell everybody at the yard, if you see something that needs fixed, fix it. Okay. Let me know how it's going. Let me know what the process is. Let's show the GM what we're doing, and we're going to show them why this is going to work better or why this isn't working at all. Okay. And if he likes the idea, he's like, that's a great idea. It's given the whole entire operation the, I guess, ability to say, I can make a difference here.
Okay, I agree.
I'm going to have everybody responsible for it. You can make all the rules you want, but unless the person next to you is following them or setting an example, why is the person next to that person going to follow?
All right, so no, I agree. That's a good point. That everybody involved. I mean, I was asking the question, you know, all 700 of us, or, but yeah, you're right. Everybody who's affected by that incident needs to be involved in the recommendations. This is really going to work. Good. Who goes back and ensures that the fixes are in place?
Safety coordinators.
Safety coordinators should be doing that. I'll help as much as I can. And who assures that the fixes are effective?
Managers,
And how do you know that they're effective?
by reminding.
By asking, how is it going out there? Is that fix, was it trailer and towing? Have we had any incidences? What's your inspection rate? Are your chains still in good shape, et cetera, et cetera? You have to follow up on those things. Okay, what should be an investigation kit? Your camera, take a first aid kit with you if you have one. I carry one in my rig. Tape recorder, it's in the phone. Tape measure, sometimes in the phone. So all those things, gloves, large envelopes, put things in. I mean, that's an extensive kit. That's a professional kit that we're putting together there. The main thing is you write things down and take pictures. Who, what, where, when, how.
If it's a serious loss, preserve the scene and close it off, tape it off until you can get people there to, Mike and guys to help you out with the investigation.
It's crucial to collect evidence and interview witnesses as soon as possible. Evidence will disappear and people will forget. We have to do that fairly quickly. What's your plan? Well, so what is our plan? What do you do when somebody gets hurt? What's the first thing you do?
Make sure they're okay.
Make sure they're okay. Right answer. Second, get them to the hospital, get them to the clinic. If you can call MedCorps at that time, that's great. Call MedCorps sometime in that process to get the first report of injury done. In Nevada, it's Form C3. So, must involve the employee if you're a union shop, employee representation. Contact immediate supervisor and other people with knowledge. Who's other people with knowledge? Regional manager, safety guy, things like that. Grab your investigation kit, approach the scene. Here's what Tim's talking about. Check for danger. You don't want to be in danger in doing that. What would be an example of you being in danger at an accident scene?
Cave in.
Cave in? Spill? Active shooter?
Things like that.
Fire? Active nature? If that's the case, stay in the fallout bunker,
Yeah, partial collapse of the building.
Yeah, or shelving, like in our situation there.
help the injured, secure the scene. Very important we do that with the tape. Identify, separate witnesses, gather the facts. First, make sure you and others don't become victims. Witnesses and physical evidence, make sure you're looking at that, taking the pictures, gathering that, looking at employees, other witnesses. Make sure you have that. Who was here at the time? Who saw this? Position, tools, and equipment, equipment operation logs, charts, records, equipment identification numbers. Okay, what forklift was it? 2201 or 2203, things like that. This is pretty easy stuff. Take notes on environmental conditions. What was the air quality? What was the weather conditions? Was it slick outside? Was it snowing? Was it 120 degrees? Things like that. Take samples wherever possible if it warrants taking samples. Note housekeeping and general working conditions. Was the workplace messy? Were there trip hazards? Things like that. Was it hot? Was it cold? A lot of food places are in very cold environments anymore. You got one place in Burley now that as soon as the food is in there, it takes seconds for it to freeze because it's so cold. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. McCain Foods uses it quite often. Note the floor working surface conditions. Take pictures. You can always delete pictures. Draw the scene if you have to. Questions on that? Captain?
What about take statements from witnesses? Would that be part of your fact finding?
Yes. I think that is right here. Interview witnesses.
There it is.
She's reading ahead. Interview promptly after the incident. If somebody's, because, you know, you don't want them to forget. I have a hard time remembering what I had for breakfast. It was awful, really. But, so, that's all I remember is, you know, choose a private place to talk. Make people comfortable in talking, you know, open-ended questions, things like that. Never accuse. Keep the conversations informal. Talk to the witnesses as equals. Okay, we're all employee owners, so it's not pointing. It's not saying you did this, things like that. You need to ask them what happened. Okay. Open-ended questions. Listen, don't blame. Ask some questions that you really know the answer to and see what they come up with. Don't do wrong. Okay. Some people are better at interviews than others. I'm not that good at it. But other people are much better. Report should include an accurate narrative of what happened, clear description, the recommendations for immediate corrective action, long term. So what's the difference between immediate corrective action and long term?
Like probation might be long term.
Probation.
Well, like if you put somebody on probation, like you're watching them for.
Okay, because they performed an unsafe act.
Right.
Okay. Until they get further training. Yank a forklift card from them.
There you go.
Can't run the forklift until you go back through training. And it might not happen for a while. That hurts the supervisor, by the way.
Yeah.
So, which sometimes is good. So immediate corrective action. So we have a shop in Jerome that it's a truss shop that's noisy. But we're moving into a new one. So we don't know how noisy it is. The interim corrective action is we're here in protection in the old facility until we can test the new facility. It's better that way. We're not putting a hearing conservation plan in there yet until we find out what we're up against in the new facility. So that's short term, long term. That's one of the examples. Another short term is we take that forklift out of service until the investigation is over with. It's a short term correction until it can be repaired. Something to that end. Recommend follow up to assure that fix is working. When are we going to follow up on it? I try to follow up on every first aid case out, just to make sure it's not getting worse. They tend to fall through the cracks. I suggest do the same thing anytime you do an incident investigation. Let's do that. Recommend review to assure that the correction is effective. Is this the right thing for us to do? Is this the right guard to be putting in place? Is this the right piece of equipment to be buying to replace the old one because it wasn't effective anymore? You know, things like that. Of course, if you're going to be spending $78,000 for a piece of equipment, and you want to go in with your eyes wide open, right? The dust collection on Granite is one of those cases that we're working at right now. We're trying to figure that out. So, list of suspected causes, human actions. So this is why the accident happened. Use this information from sketches, photos. Pretty simple. Remember that your report needs to be based on facts. All recommendations should be based on accurate, documented findings. Somewhere in here I talk about opinions. So when and where the accident happened, what the sequence event, who was involved, what injuries occurred, and how were the employees injured. Pretty simple. If additional resources are needed, go ahead and get those. Call Tim. He'll fly down and help us if we need to. There's other resources. There's other consultants out there. Do your initial investigation if you need some help. I'm 3.5 hours away at any time. So, be glad to do that. Levi or Rick, any of the regionals will help out. You guys are working tears. I get this going here. Who's responsible for making the changes? We'll follow. Yesterday's group was a lot more vocal, weren't they?
Rowdy.
Rowdy. Well, outcome of the investigation of the 50-pound carton falling from 12 foot high might include the correction of a sloppy storage area. It might be the toe cake not being in place. It might be the condition of the box that it was sitting on top of. We see that all the time, crush boxes, you keep on stacking things on top of things like that. And I can't read that bottom, you know, that's what we have to look at. Other reporting we have to do, and let's not go here, let's not do this, but if there's a fatality, you have to report the fatality within 8 hours to OSHA. That's what we mean by an OSHA reportable injury. OSHA got a problem, you know. And if it's a hospital, inpatient hospitalization, so in other words, somebody goes to the clinic and they put them into the hospital for overnight or longer observation, whatever it is, an amputation, and that doesn't have to be a bone amputation. That could be the tip of your finger amputation, or loss of an eye. You have to notify, report it to OSHA within 24 hours. I guarantee you, on a fatality, you're going to get a visit. On these other ones, you might get a phone call. But chances are, you're going to come down and talk. Just have a chat with OSHA. You need that back?
No. So in this process, obviously, if something like that happened, it would go to you.
Yeah.
We don't want anybody calling OSHA. That's going to be you.
Okay. You know, we don't want anybody calling OSHA, period.
Well, of course not.
So you know, of course, every employee has the right to call OSHA.
Sure.
Wrong, and
right.
We're not correcting.
But the process and procedure,
is
hey, Christian Anderson is going to go get a hold of me, get on a window, give you the information immediately. You're going to pass it on to the proper authorities.
That's what we should do here. That's what we need to do here. In Nevada, it's a little bit different story because they have the state. So we're part of Region 10, which is Alaska, Oregon, Washington, and Nevada. Montana,
Don't think so.
Region 7. So in our region, you know, in Region 10, we're the only federal OSHA. Idaho is the only federal OSHA in that region. And then we're Utah. Utah has their own OSHA. Wyoming, Montana, and Nevada. So we're the only ones with federal OSHA around it. So if we're, you know, like Elko would be reporting to the, I don't want to say NOSH, Nevada Occupational Safety and Health. So one of those things that we have. Anytime we have an incident down there, I have different forms I have to fill out. So it's one of those things. Keep on these investigations. I saw some come through this year. This person shouldn't be working for us. Is one of the things that was on there coming from the safety coordinator. That's an opinion. Keep it to the facts. Okay. If you have a problem with that person, talk to the supervisor. Don't put it on paper. Things like that. Let's get some other things going on there. So you know, like I said, keep it to the facts. No opinions. We're not here to do that. So, all right, we're gonna. Does anybody need a bio break? How about our audience? All right, so let's talk about Hussein Bolt again. Yeah, sure. We got extra markers right there. Tim's gonna write this stuff down. Let's watch it again real quick. Everybody see it? Should have made it bigger.
E adesso invece è il primo degli umani. Intanto vediamo lo scalzo. Ah, mamma mia!
No, questa poi no.
Pazzesco! Soffica un po', è stato investito dalla cameraman. Queste sono riprese non della regia internazionale, ma della. Adesso invece è il primo degli umani. Intanto vediamo lo scalzo. Ah, mamma mia!
No, questa poi no.
Pazzesco! Soffica un po', è stato
Okay. First, what happened?
He wasn't focused, he wasn't paying attention. What happened?
Well, what happened was he
the-
had a collision between the equipment that the cameraman was using and a contestant.
So, Bolt went boom.
What?
Right?
That's the
What?
what happened.
Bolt went boom. Someone knocked him down, right?
Yeah.
Anything else happened there?
The guy went boom.
Cameraman.
Cameraman. Camera and man. Went boom, right? Two different. So far, three things happened. Anything else happened there?
Loss of control of equipment.
Okay. Segway, whatever that thing's called.
Yeah, it's
It
a,
got took off. God knows where it went.
Oh, true.
So that's what happened, right?
Where'd it go?
Guy got knocked out. So somebody give me a why question as to that. Why is he not wearing shoes? Why is Usain Bolt not wearing shoes? Okay.
Why was the scooter allowed?
Well, let's stick to this one first. Anybody have an answer for that?
You just take
Yeah.
some shoes off.
Their race shoes, whatever. Okay. Racing
Yeah.
shoes. Would that wearing shoes have prevented or not prevented the accident?
No.
Okay. So we can follow that down. But is the shoes or lack thereof the root cause of the accident?
No.
Probably not. We eliminate that. Another why. Where are they operating motorized racers? Why use Segway? Anyone want to try and answer that one?
To keep up with Bolt?
For filming, right? To film. Filming while moving or whatever. Okay, why do they need to do that?
for
Steady shot, whatever aesthetic reasons.
for presentation.
Okay. Could that have had something to do with his accident?
Yes.
So we know why he's on the Segway. So, but there's the Segway itself, using the Segway and motorized equipment in that area, is that a potential root cause for this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So why he's on the Segway, some kind of a decision was made to put him on that Segway, right? To use.
I think you could have. It's just not a controlled environment. You can use this Segway in the right environment. And this guy doesn't have a specific path of travel that he's supposed to be walking in. The Segway doesn't have a specific place that he should be or not be, and no one was aware of their surroundings, either one.
Okay. So we have a decision to use the Segway. Maybe not the right location, maybe they're not right piece of equipment. Could that be the potential root cause of this accident?
Possibly. The finish line to where the cool down area was separated by where that camera track is, that silver thing you see, that's a camera track. And the contestants had to walk around the camera track to get to the cool down area, which is what Usain Bolt was doing.
Okay.
Okay, so it was separated by about 50, 75 yards.
So your question is?
No, my statement is that you had a distance that contestants were required to walk in between where the camera track was and the edge of the field, and the cameraman to get a better shot of the contestant as the contestant was walking away was following along in between the camera track and the edge of the field.
So you're
Probably where he shouldn't have been.
So you're trying to answer the question as to why they're using the Segway?
As to why the Segway was there.
Okay.
In that specific area.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're asking, if I were asking that, or I wanted to come down to, I'd ask why do they have to walk so far to the cool down area, or why is the area obstructed?
Right.
Or whatever.
Right.
So you're saying the location of the racetrack versus the cool down area?
The process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that may or may not be an adjustable feature. I don't know much about stadium building. I've never conducted the Olympics. But that may be a situation you have to work around. But I think we might be onto something here. Are there all
observation.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of texting and driving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I don't think that particular equipment should be operated while filming. He lost
Because that's
sight.
what he's doing is like looking down at his camera,
Yeah.
not paying attention to where he was driving.
So it's his fault?
Cameraman?
Is that the root cause?
No, I think they're making yeah, go ahead.
Like, yeah, we're just.
We're not assigning fault yet.
No. We're not looking for fault. We're looking for root cause. Was the root cause the cameraman?
Yeah.
Or was it the decision to put him on the Segway while filming the camera?
Decision for inappropriate equipment.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing that focusing through a camera while riding a Segway is an impossible task. I would say if we repeated this with 1,000 different cameramen, we're going to get a similar situation more times than not. The root cause to that is whoever decided to do that. If this is an independent cameraman, not have an employee, then yes, his decision to ride a Segway is a root cause. If it was his boss that put him on the Segway, that's the root cause. It's the decision to put him on the Segway. That, in my opinion, is the root cause to this accident. Now, as a group, can we think of any alternatives that could have been used in addition to the Segway?
Walking?
Walking?
Having spotters and like somebody guiding them, say, look, you're too close to the racetrack.
Possibly. How about, what's that?
The track.
Using the track.
That's a big track.
It's a camera track.
Yeah. So, is it possible that we could use the camera track like that one to film this?
Yes.
Possibly. How about the overhead cameras used in NFL stadiums? There's a lot of engineering solutions to that. But what I wanted for you guys was the drilling down question to get to that, right? Why did they make that decision? That's your root cause.
I'd be curious if at the Olympics like that, there's an entity that controls the track, another entity that has the overhead, and this is somebody else, another TV company or whatever, trying to get a shot, doesn't have access to all that stuff, so takes his own Segway or whatever it is, trying to get that shot. So he was being greedy, saying, I want that close-up shot, but I'm not really part of the track, and so he implemented his own process, trying to get that shot.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
I would be stunned if that was that loose of control.
Yeah, someone had to approve it.
There are so many layers of people involved in that I'd be stunned. If that's
And all those layers above are responsible because they let this happen.
Yes. But when you do an investigation like this, what happens a lot of times? What's the incident result? What do we write up? He was a good guy. We shouldn't fire him. It never happened again. Right? That can happen. I did this with a group of people, insurance people. You know what their response was? That cameraman should be fired. Really? Yes.
Nobody's asked if the cameraman is okay.
Good question, right? Usain Bolt. There's an impact to him. The cameraman, the camera.
Well, is Usain Bolt walking through an area he's not supposed to be walking through as well? He's also got a handler that's following real close behind. Was the handler supposed to be between him and the cameras?
A lot of questions. But would any of that prevent? So there's a lot.
Through the scene, we gotta make sure that everybody involved, we can say, and is okay first, right?
Yeah. That you're seeing all the things we talked about and make sure the guy's okay. I mean, depends on your perspective on this, right? If you're Lloyd's of London and you're sure Usain Bolt, who are you concerned about? Usain Bolt. If you're the Olympics, who are you concerned about? Kind of your reputation, right? There's a lot, there's beyond, we're talking about work comp today and employee safety, but what are some of the other impacts that happen on an accident like this?
The equipment. Everybody's assuming that was a Segway. That was not a Segway.
Okay.
That was a purpose-built machine for that cameraman.
The Segway's taking a beating for it.
You know, but if you go back and look, It had oversized tires, a very box, and it only attached up to just below his kneecaps. That's as far up as it went.
Okay.
Was it the Segway without the?
Yeah, it didn't have the vertical. And so was it approved, or I mean, who's to say it was a safe machine to even operate?
Could not. And was he trained on?
Right, ask
Yeah, was it? Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Tim, can I ask you a question to make an observation?
Yeah.
So I think what we just did here is very reflective of kind of, you know, what we go through when we're trying to do a root cause analysis, and I genuinely want to ask your opinion on this. I think there's an unreasonable drive to identify a single root cause. So if we look at, like we're talking about the airline industry, I don't know if any of you ever read an NTSB report on an airline crash. If you haven't, you should. It's an example of really good investigative work. What's interesting is when the NTSB investigates an airplane crash, what you will notice when you read that report is there is not a single root cause, a single but-for causation for this event happening. It's a number of factors that come into play that make this happen. So the stuff that y'all were just fleshing out, and again, we don't know the specifics of this scene, but it could be the decision makers anticipated this. And they said, we'll have a handler for Usain Bolt. We'll make sure that there's a buffer in between. We'll tell him not to walk in this. Who knows? A number of things that could happen, right? So now all of a sudden, somebody goes into an area they should have gone into. The handler gets distracted. The cameraman, you know, is now a number of things. And I wonder if we do ourselves a disservice. This is a question I'm asking Mike and Tim. Do we do ourselves a disservice by trying to push people to get to, here's the answer? Because I think there's trepidation that did I get the right answer? You know, and then in the back of your mind, you're kind of thinking, but I think there may be 3 or 4 more. And I'm wondering if there's a lot of gold that we're missing and not identifying those 3 or 4 more. Because the reality is that we may have a guy that's not well trained on this machine, and this machine has an unbelievable track record. We may have a handler that's not well trained. We may have poor decision making. We may have, you know, poor logistics. And if we solve all those things and improve all those things, we get a whole lot better. But if we pigeonhole ourselves into thinking the one problem we have here is replacing breakers, right? So let's take an example like we had with the electrical panels. Like we're so focused on getting to one solution. You know, part of when I, like just using that one as a recent example, when I look at that, I say, how bad is our housekeeping? If we let electrical panels get to this point, if we let bumper pool trailers get to this point, why should I infer that our garage doors are safe? That our overhead doors aren't going to come crashing down on sublighted facilities? Why should I assume that, you know, we're being attentive to electrical, you know, extension cords? Why should I, you know, that it raises a bigger question, right? But we have this drive to identify the problem. So I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are on, is there merit in saying there may be 1 or more, and it's actually helpful to identify as many as possible and not to just say what is the one? Because our form focuses on what's the root cause.
Yes. What you're saying is absolutely correct. There is merit to finding more than one root cause. Ideally, what you do is you take multiple forms or multiple boards, and we go down this process for each and every individual question we have as a group, right? We would investigate the handler's role, why there's a handler, why that handler was chosen, why that track layout was picked. And you go down and drill down on each one. We did that briefly with the why the shoes on, right? Drill down real quickly, kind of, and I don't know all the details. It may have been a very significant reason that could eventually be a root cause. But the process is to kind of focus on one question at a time, go down until you figure out what a root cause for that is. And if you get multiple branches, you can do that. And I think you're right. Usually, I don't believe there is one root cause. I think of root causes as chains, you know, kind of a chain of events. And if it's one of those links you remove and it completely stops the outcome, then it's a root cause. You can remove all kinds of links and it won't change the outcome. Those aren't root causes. So in this situation, you know, if you put everything else, put it in a different location, I don't think you'd change the outcome. If you left everything the same and put him on a self-driven, different type of motorized equipment, I don't know if you'd change the outcome. Or if you change the camera, I don't think you'd change the outcome. So, you know, I think in this event, the primary root cause is putting him on that equipment. But there could be other causes as well. Yes?
I'm still not really convinced the problem was the Segway. I think somebody made a decision here at Franklin that forklift is the best tool to use to move lumber around. And maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. But the reality is, after somebody made that decision, we've made a whole lot of other steps to make it a safe solution to do what we do. I think that Segway used in the right application would probably be fine. It's no different than a funny car on a racetrack going 300 miles per hour. That's not going to be safe going down Eagle Road, right? But they've created an environment where it's really not a very dangerous. I mean, it's not nearly as dangerous as it looks or seems. They created these controls to create the environment where it is a pretty safe thing to do. So I don't think the Segway was the issue. I think it was everything after the decision to use the Segway. There should have been more analysis. How do we use the Segway in a safe manner where somebody's not going to get taken out?
Is there a safe manner to use the Segway to fill this particular application?
Well, I would hazard a guess that you could create a safe way to use it.
Okay.
Or who's to say that he even had the proper training on the Segway, or like whoever made that decision, I mean, they may have used it several times before, and they may have had like a new cameraman and put him, it's worked, 5 other people doing the same exact thing, but then they put somebody else on it and it just
so nothing's happened yet.
Right.
So it's okay. Because nothing's gone wrong yet.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. So if they've used this same thing and then it's several times before, and they're like, oh well, we've used 4 other people and have done this and it's been okay and we haven't had any accidents, and then they put somebody else on there. So it may be either the person that didn't give him the proper training, or he didn't know how to even ride one of those and film at the same time.
So in that situation, your root cause would not necessarily be the decision to use the Segway for the rider, but the failure to what?
To train him.
Train. Okay, that's a valid argument. From my experience, I would not like to see that Segway used at all. I keep saying Segway, and it's not.
Well, it's kind of like texting and driving. Yes, you can do it over and over. You can even train for it, but we probably should look at the big picture and say, let's just eliminate it.
Yes.
And earlier, what you're saying, and what Levi was alluding is, in an investigation, you want to cast your net as wide as possible, okay, and avoid that laser focus and try to drive right to the root cause. You've got to write down all your whats, all your whys, all your wheres, and all your hows, and then fill them in until it's done on each one of those. That's what you're.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we can't possibly do a real super good investigation on this particular incident because we're not there. We don't know the details. This is an example of how to use the steps, and we're going to use it on accidents we have no detail on. This is just a demonstration of how the process works. But to answer your question, you said the Segway may not have been the wrong choice of equipment. We could have created safe processes. We could have done training to avoid it. However, as a root cause, if you eliminate that piece of equipment, you eliminate all the follow down the line you have to do on it. So if you didn't have any forklifts in your yard, you wouldn't have to have any forklift certifications or any forklift training, right? You'd have to have something else.
Based
It
on
may not be effective, but
based on what we're discussing here, though, I mean, there are certain things, I mean, there's an inherent risk to get up in the morning. Like forklifts and this type of thing, I mean, we could say, well, if there were no cameras at the Olympics, then of course we wouldn't have any issues. There wouldn't be a track, there wouldn't be anything else. But we have to actually look at what do we have to accomplish and what inherent risks are we going to achieve with that.
Yeah.
So I mean, then it goes back to the safety plan. You can either get rid of it, engineer control, administrative controls, and then down to PPE. And it's kind of funny that we actually ran down, we started with PPE. Why isn't he wearing shoes? Then it went down to why isn't he behind a guardrail or a training process, and now we're coming to the why don't we just get rid of it? Now the question is can we operate the Olympics without cameras? I venture to guess that it wouldn't be successful.
I'm thinking there's someone who say no.
So I mean, after that, now we've made the decision we're going to have cameras. What possible methods can we use to operate cameras efficiently and safely in the Olympics? So you've got the track issue here. Are we going to operate it on a track and only have the cameras allowed in tracks? I mean, if we were to look at this and go to a root cause, like you said, we're kind of scratching the surface on this, but I imagine that anybody operating any type of equipment around expensive people is probably sitting down going, okay, what safety positions do we have in place in the event that this thing goes crazy? What do we have, if our guy shows up drunk, do we have certifications for them on operating equipment? Do we have safety plans involved? Do we have spotters for them? I mean, I worked at the Salt Lake Olympics years and years ago, and you could not go anywhere without being escorted if you were on any type of anything that was in the official playing areas. So, I mean, I imagine there's probably a spotter for that cameraman that is not on the scene, who's probably partially to blame on this as well.
Could be.
And, is there a director in his ear telling him, move forward, move left, etc.? And these are all things that we would have to look into play. And like Levi said, I don't think this is a one single, well, he was just distracted and hit the rail. There are a lot of people that fouled up on this to make this one incident happen.
That's why I said I was very surprised to actually see this footage happen. But to your point, is there other venues we can look at to get resources for this? A couple come to my mind is Tour de France, the NFL, the NBA. So
They should just hire Chad Bukowski with his drone. Everyone else can say something.
does everybody understand kind of the process and the drill down?
Yep.
Good, because you're going to do it next.
Yes. So to answer your question, there's not, in most cases, there's not one single root cause. It's a multiple factors that we drill down to find out what's going on with that incident. And it depends on the severity and multiple factors. So we'll take.
I mean, my follow-up question on that, I guess, is do you think that we have an issue where we like to button it up with a single root cause? The form itself it says root cause, not root causes. Is there just, it's human nature to want to say, here's what caused this, and now I'm done with this investigation, and would we be better off? Is there an opportunity for us to improve to say, look, a lot of these are going to have potentially multiple things that, again, if you broke, to Tim's point, you broke the causal chain, this wouldn't have happened. This could have stopped.
So what I think is we tend to try to drill down to one root cause. But what I see at Franklin is we're not drilling down to any root cause enough. We don't get to those multiple. We don't get to the real answers of what caused that injury. I think and that's why this workshop is being put on, because I don't think that we understand that we're not getting there. And I don't care if there's multiple root causes or that they are dependent on each other to happen, Venn diagram stuff, I think that each one of these things that we find lead each other into that cause. So I agree, but I don't think, I really don't think that we're getting down far enough on that to identify all the factors.
Right, I guess part of what I'm asking is I wonder if one of the reasons we're not is because we're asking people to come up with the answer, right? So as soon as even when you started the deal, and this happens with any sort of group presentation or whatever, right? You ask a question to a crowd, and people are nervous they're going to get it wrong. And so when there's one answer, now all of a sudden, instead of describing what happened and how we could have broke the causal chain, it now feels more like a math problem. And we put 15 and the answer's 14. You don't want to be that guy. So, is it an area where we could, help ourselves? I completely agree with you. That's why, like you said, you're doing these sessions both yesterday and today. We actually need to get to the root cause, but as part of our issue there, that we need to give ourselves also, in a sense, permission, but also abdication, that we need to identify all the root causes, and that process is where the value is. Don't cut the process short. Don't stop with, one chain, follow it all the way down, and don't worry about missing the answer, because rarely is there an answer. There are multiple answers for why something happened, or at least what could have prevented it.
Okay, so 10 minute break. Is that enough for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Come back, and I need groups of 5, and one group will have 6. Okay, so that table will be one group of 5. This table one group of 5. This table one group of 5. We'll go through the case studies, and I'll give you instructions on that.
You guys are on our table.
Ted. And we found out that he didn't set the ladder up. He assumed it was set up properly from the night before and didn't do his inspection and stuff like that. So, who's your spokesman with the Wobbly Ladder Bunch?
John?
John?
I guess I am.
Okay, what happened?
Thanks for volunteering, John.
Employee was working on a ladder. The ladder seemed to collapse. The employee fell and broke his arm. So we have a number of issues, or whys.
Sure. Okay.
One was, do you want the investigative details before that?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, we haven't heard all the background, so.
Okay.
You gonna do that?
Investigation details. Employee had worked 7 12-hour shifts in a row. Accident happened at the end of shift. Employee was standing on the top step of the ladder. The employee was approximately 10 feet above the floor level. No fall arrest or restraint system was used. A ladder inspection policy is in place, but there is no evidence that the ladder has ever been inspected. Investigation reveals that the ladder was damaged and did not provide a stable working platform in any environment. Interview with facility manager reveals that he did not inspect the ladder when it was due for inspection. He was aware that the ladder needed to be inspected.
So what is your first why? We know what happened. Fell off the ladder and broke his arm.
Correct.
So why did that happen?
Our first why was the ladder in service?
Is that the root cause?
Maybe.
No, it's just why was it? It's just why was it in service? Why was it in service? Okay. So what procedures were in place to keep it out of service?
Well, that goes back to the next why of why wasn't the ladder inspected?
So,
And
why in service not inspected?
Not
Is that the
inspected.
answer? Okay. Next logical why question?
So, next logical, why was the employee on the top step?
So let me ask you this question. This kind of came up with the Moffat tip over earlier this month. So the employee being on the top step, is that independent of the ladder not being inspected?
No. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Different.
Could be.
Two different things? So if the ladder was inspected,
You still get on the top.
He could still get on the top step, right?
Sure.
Okay, so we have two number one whys.
So that's why I started with the second line.
I get it.
Well, you can have several.
Okay.
I mean,
So a why for number two would then be, now, for the first why question.
Okay.
Why number two is facility manager didn't inspect the lab. Or why,
That's still on the.
why didn't the facility manager?
Why not inspected, right?
Right.
Okay. Answer to that, facility manager didn't do it?
Well, that's the information I got.
Yeah, okay.
Cause you can, the discussion was for the facility manager, but at the same time, an operator's to inspect the ladder before putting it in operations also.
So what would be the third logical why question?
Why didn't he inspect?
Why didn't the facility
Why not inspect? Kind of the same that, but we were putting manager inspect, right? Anybody has a guess on that one?
didn't have a checklist. He just didn't get to it.
No policy. No policy on ladder inspection.
No, the policy's
Oh,
there.
yeah. No policy's in place.
Policy's there.
So,
Too busy.
well, that's an assumption.
Well, no, I mean, I'm asking.
They're all
an
assumptions.
investigation. So, I mean, you have a scenario, you have to be, you kind of have to just make it up a little bit. So what would be your answer to why didn't the manager do it?
Short staff. 7 to 12 hour shift.
That was your investigation, so did you have an answer to it?
We didn't get that.
No.
Okay. But that would lead you somewhere, you're going down that road, right? So that would be definitely, hey, that's a question I would not want to go to Levi and pick. Oh, I don't know. Why didn't you do it, Tim? I don't know. How about this one? Why did employees stand on the top step? What would be the answer to that?
Wasn't the right product, wasn't the right ladder for the job.
Because
It wasn't too tall.
Because he had to go into the top row.
too short.
Too
The
short.
ladder was too short. Something like that, right?
Right.
You need an 8-foot ladder, you got a 5-foot ladder. You got to stand on top of it, right? Okay. What would be the next logical why question?
Why was the ladder too short?
Or
Was he?
why not have another ladder?
Yeah. Back up a little.
Why not use bigger ladder? So, and the question, answer that be not on the truck,
Ladder unavailable.
not available.
End of shift, didn't like it.
And
Yeah,
shit.
to work-
I mean,
to work
that-
long hours.
so this goes that direction, right? Okay. Any other chains that you guys came up with? Any other possible potential root causes here?
We came up with why why so many hours for the employees.
So that would be kind of maybe, might tie into these, but it could also be another chain, right, to go down. Why 84-hour work? Because that's what we're talking about, right? 7 12-hour shifts, 84 hours. And there's a multitude of answers to this, right? Understaffed, super busy, likes being paid time and a half for 44 hours a week.
I don't know if this is a separate thing, but why on the top step? So why did the employee fail to recognize the hazard of being on the top step? Is that part of that, or is that a whole different?
Could be one of your answers here.
Inadequate
So
maybe he wasn't trained.
each
That's what we talked about.
one of
maybe
these,
he wasn't trained or
Yeah,
for ladder safety to know that he shouldn't have been on.
like training or too tired
Or it wasn't, it was just a total disregard.
or just
yeah.
Just wants to get the job done.
So each time you ask a question and each time you get an answer, you might have to start a chain of questions here, chain of questions there, right? Why wasn't he trained? Or why didn't maybe he was trained? Stickers? Were they on the ladder? Ladder wasn't inspected? Was there another ladder available?
How big was the space to set up the ladder? Could you not fit a taller ladder in that space?
Good point.
Ground conditions too.
So, you get the point, right?
Yeah.
And to Levi's point earlier, it is really easy, really quickly, this thing can go several different directions. And no, we shouldn't confine ourselves to up here. It wasn't inspected, facility manager inspected, it's too busy, didn't care, whatever that. There's also the element here, right? And this one, I mean, that one is, that has to play it. That, I'm sure that plays a part in it. So, any other potential root causes people or chains of thought people would want to go down on this?
Why wasn't he in fall protection gear?
Okay.
But not on a ladder.
Is it required?
No.
Not if you're using the ladder properly.
Well, he's not getting off the ladder.
Yeah. So it's not really necessary to use fall protection when you're working on a ladder. If you're doing the ladder correctly, because you're not stepping outside the rungs of the ladder's set up correctly, it's been inspected twice. Actually, the guy using it should inspect it. He's trained on how to use it correctly. Shouldn't need fall protection on a ladder, right? Does that mean you can't? Is it impossible to use fall protection on a ladder? Can't tie into the ladder, that won't work, that's worthless. But it could go up and secure in. We do that, you guys do that all the time, right? So, right, go up on roofs, you put in vault anchors all the time. No, they're all good questions. They're all valid lines of investigation. What you don't want to do is, get down on one tangent and then stop. Good. What did you guys come up with your actual? Did you come up with a corrective action?
No, we haven't built it.
Okay, I got that one. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Corrective action ideas?
Oh, it's a tough crowd.
There's 3 different ones.
Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm. There's 3 different root causes to each one of those.
Could be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, what's your corrective action here, maybe?
Depends on the reason why.
Right? And hire more people, or don't take the job, or what?
Well, hey, one of the things that's interesting too, like if you, to your point, you got these 3 sort of paths.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, if you can identify multiple root causes, any one of them could potentially stop the causal chain, right? It doesn't mean that, for instance, if the guy hadn't worked an 84-hour week and was, worn out and tired, maybe he would have had more capacity to, think about what he's doing. He would have had more time to go get another ladder. It could have stopped. Even if the inspection hadn't occurred, even if these other things were still true, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't also be done. But this layered approach then doesn't rely on this one thing being done to make it safe. You've got a person that's working reasonable hours and is thinking clearly. You also have ladders inspected. You also have the right training. And, this layered approach helps you create that safe working environment to eliminate those hazards.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Good. Good job, guys. All right.
Okay, let's talk about the big box next. Who's your spokesman in that group?
I think there's going to be multiple.
Well, at least 2.
Anybody want to do the whiteboard?
Safety director and safety coordinator.
So we came up with 3 different scenarios after we got the front and the back end of our story. So
what happened? Tell everybody this.
So we had an employee. Is this the first one? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So an employee was moving boxes on a pallet that weighed 110 pounds each. The boxes were long and skinny, 64 by 12 by 12. The employee trained in proper lifting techniques. And he was moving the boxes, like walking the boxes. Yeah. The boxes began to fall. The employee tried to move it closer to the pallet. When it ended up, he resulted in suffering a back injury. So investigation details: employee was moving heavy boxes by himself. It was not lifting them completely off the ground, just walking them. They were big and awkward. Let's see, what else is there? No. That's about what we got so far.
When you try to catch the ball.
So when they started to fall, he tried to catch them, strained his back, out his back.
So what's your first why question?
So our first why question is, why did the employee hurt his back?
And your answer?
Because the boxes were too heavy.
Okay.
So then our next one was, why was he doing them by himself? Why did he get help? Because his help called in sick that day. So then, since he was there alone, our next thing was, why did he do it alone? So our next thing was, because he was in a time crunch and he was kind of in a hurry to get it done because there was a truck coming to pick it up. So we had to get that done.
So not enough time to call for
Yeah.
the superintendent or wait till, okay.
So then what we said was, so then why did he have to get it done? Or why did he have to get it out so fast? Our next scenario was because it came in late. It was shipped late. We received it late. And now we're getting it to our customer. So now we're trying to get it back on another truck to get out. So then what we decided to say was, well, why was it shipped late? Because of the bad weather.
Was that in there? I don't remember.
We made up our own. We made up our own.
You're filling in a lot of stuff.
But that was where we got to, and then we got,
We can't control the weather.
yeah, 2 more deals. But
But we can make changes because of the weather.
Well, we can have an inclement weather policy or something, right? Okay. So now this is actually, I thought, a pretty realistic way a chain of events might go. Now they did something I thought was really smart, and they had a spin-off on this. And I can't remember what it was. Someone went to
Wendell has the spin on it.
Okay.
So if you look at the incident, it said that he had proper training.
Okay.
So now proper training to me is not holding a box up on its end and walking it. We would never teach that in a training class. We're going to teach, if it's over that 100-pound mark, that it's going to be 2 people lifting or mechanical.
Okay.
So he wasn't following his proper training. He had training, but he wasn't following.
So what's your why question?
So the why question is, why didn't he follow his training?
Why not follow training? Okay. And your answer?
Answer is that his training was inadequate.
Inadequate, ineffective.
Yeah, it was ineffective, inadequate.
Ineffective, something, right? Okay. Right. What's your second why question down that chain?
So why was the training not effective?
Why ineffective? Okay, and your answer to
that? The trainer was getting complicit in his routine. Taught that class 50 times already.
So for training?
Yeah, the training message the message was put out there, but it really wasn't put out there in a way that the employee understood the message and knew where the trigger points were. He should have, in his training class, recognized that, hey, I'm over 80 pounds, I need to be doing something different other than doing it by myself.
So but who's to say that he did get the proper training, just didn't want to follow through or took it upon himself?
Well, yeah, we could.
That's not a scenario. Our scenario, you got to pick someone.
Yeah.
You only got 15 minutes.
In reality,
you got to choose.
Training.
That would be.
In reality, I honestly think that somebody is just gonna do it.
Okay. But let's keep that in mind. It's not a bad question, but let's follow through this.
We're going off of he didn't follow his training.
Okay. So
we're trying to understand why he didn't.
So the employee didn't understand his training.
Yep.
Okay. Why didn't understand his training, or why didn't we know that?
Yeah, why didn't we know that? And we came up with that we failed to realize that the training wasn't effective. The management and the trainer didn't realize that, hey, I might be saying the words, but the message isn't getting across.
Did I spell that right? No.
Asses?
How do I spell it?
AS.
Thank you. That didn't go on the table. Okay. Failed to assess the effectiveness of the training, the effects, right? So what's kind of the circle you use for training, Wendell? The continuous improvement model?
Well, we've got to be able to test our training and make sure that it's being effective. Yeah.
Kind of the process you guys use for the wagon?
Yeah.
Plan, you do, or you check, oops.
I do check that.
Yeah. So you've, somewhere in here, where's this in here?
Check.
The check part.
Kind of missed that, right? Okay. And then to answer, I've got your name, I'm sorry.
It's Melissa.
You didn't follow his training. Why? Why didn't you follow training? Do you have a...
No, that's what I'm saying. Is
Okay.
like, because the question was
Mhm.
at the very beginning, it said, why not follow his training? And then he said inadequate or ineffective.
We decided that was a result we decided that we came up with.
But what if it is effective and he just disregarded it? Yeah, like you said,
Okay.
and chose not to do. Like if we have a policy that you at 100 pounds it takes 2 people.
Okay.
Well, it was 100 pounds, but he's like, oh, I just want to do it. I can do this and get it done,
Okay.
and he just takes it upon himself and does it.
So what, going down that scenario, what would be your why question to that?
I don't know.
Why did you disregard it?
Why did the employee think he could do that or something to that effect? That might be a different line of investigation, right?
Is that part of your culture?
Right.
You know, did he feel he had to? You know, and one of the other scenarios that we kind of played with was, well, he was trained not to lift any boxes over 100 pounds, okay? Or 90 pounds, whatever the thing said. And in his training, he would be told anytime there's a box over 90 pounds. This box, for whatever reason, wasn't labeled 2-person lift or over 90 pounds. So that could be a third root cause. Whoever's supposed to label the box didn't. Why didn't they? Well, they ran out of labels. Their scale didn't work. That guy got snowed in, couldn't come in because of the inclement weather. I mean, right? So, anybody else have potential thoughts on this? Good. All right. Very good job. Fantastic. Okay. All right, you get to rate the last one.
I'll get to rate. Now this is the pit. I'm gonna rate this.
I'll raise one.
I'll raise this over here. Where do you want me, Johnny? Right here. Somebody take a picture of this.
Sure.
Johnny did.
Johnny should be on it.
Oh, you got a picture of it.
Oh, that's right. It's being recorded, right?
Yeah, you got the asses on tape.
Classroom.
Could be any worse than my last week's training with protect your asses. Didn't get too many comments on that. I expect more. The big pit. You guys. Who's going to talk about it?
All right.
This one involves the house, unfortunately.
Two guys went down into a pit. They noticed there was a lot of heat, lack of oxygen. Both entered into the pit. When they went to go leave, employee number 2 died, fell down into the bottom of the pit. So, why it happened? Well, there was carbon monoxide buildup and asphyxiation. What was caused from that was a smoldering fire from a previous work that happened the day before. It was an unsafe work zone entering. The fire from the previous day was not extinguished properly. The lack of training, the PPE and testing of the confinement area was not done, and management
So your first why?
was carbon monoxide buildup.
Okay.
So the question is, why was there carbon monoxide buildup? That was our first why.
Okay. And why is that? Why did that happen?
Because of a fire.
Fire unextinguished?
Correct.
Oh, by the way, this is cursive for those of you. Sorry.
We don't know what that is. English is the first language.
English. That was Latin. We don't know. Okay, why two?
Why was there a smoldering fire?
Why was it not extinguished?
Yeah. Right. Okay. And that answer?
Because we decided that there was not any like fire extinguishers or equipment to extinguish a fire properly.
Yeah. It said that the guy who had been doing the welding the day before used sand and dirt to try to extinguish the fire. So we decided that he didn't have a fire extinguisher on site.
Okay. No equipment, use sand and dirt, no fire extinguisher, no fire watch. Do we do any fire-related activities here? Any hot work here?
We have our policy, yes, we do in the county shop, we do.
All right.
Diesel shop.
Diesel shop. Yeah. So they have a fire watch after they do something?
30 minutes.
So we got a lot of lumber out there. What? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so
why did they? So next why?
So why wasn't there training or personal protective equipment or testing?
That's two questions, right? Why no PPE?
Yeah. And why was there no training?
Training
for what?
So we kind of did two, just like the
Oh,
last one did.
okay.
So that first one runs down.
So the first one, your root cause was no fire extinguisher. Is that what you decided the root cause for that first one
I'm
was?
trying to remember what we got to on that first one.
Yeah, so
Like
the
this
carbon monoxide buildup was our first one.
Okay.
And why it happened? Well, there was asphyxiation.
There was a fire.
That was the second one, was asphyxiation.
Yes.
That second why?
Oh, the second one
Right,
was
'cause we
smoldering
were
fire
at a
was unsafe work zone entering. That's why we had to.
So why was there CO2 buildup? The answer is there was a smoldering fire. Why was there a smoldering fire? Because it wasn't extinguished properly. Why wasn't it extinguished properly? Because of lack of a fire extinguisher / improper training. And then why was there improper training? Because of that was like a management didn't train properly.
Okay.
That was our first.
Okay. So number 4 was no training.
Improper training.
Okay. So in that root cause, the idea is that if there was no smoldering fire,
Yeah.
there would no CO buildup. They would not have asphyxiated. They're not smothered.
Yeah. So then,
Okay, so you're
so the second, that's our first one. The next side is why did the employee asphyxiate? You want me to spell asphyxiate for you?
Not breathe.
Almost. SPH. Why? Yeah, you can say suffocate. That's good.
How do you spell that?
Just right die. Just right because he entered an unsafe work environment. That's the answer to number 1.
Okay.
Is that he entered an unsafe environment. So why did he enter an unsafe work environment? We put because he didn't do the testing and he wasn't wearing his, well, he also probably wasn't trained properly.
So no testing.
No testing for confined space.
Okay. So why did that happen? No.
And then that was the same answer, was management did not provide equipment / test training for confined space work.
Okay. So this is all our fault. No, just so going back to the original scenario, they smelt something bad, right?
Their eyes were
burning.
Their eyes were burning in their eyes. They entered anyways. They went to go investigate, going further in, both of them without any proper PPE. When they decided it was unsafe, they both decided to leave. One made it out, one made it about halfway out, fell off the ladder, and died at the bottom.
Sorry.
Boys, John, I have a question for you. Just curiosity, what would be the proper PPE for CO buildup or lack of oxygen?
Self-contained breathing. Ventilation. Or CBA.
So, self-contained CBA would be the PPE for it. Ventilation would be an engineering control. You don't wear it. Good. You didn't say air purifying respirators. There's no air, there's nothing to purify.
So we didn't. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye, really. So they said their eyes were burning. Why did they continue going at that point? Was somebody forcing them into it? Like the Evergreen situation, Evergreen Environmental in Soda Springs? Was that the case? You know, we don't know that, you know. So here, you know, we would not force somebody to do that, right? We would test the air. We don't have any air monitors. So then you get into, okay, where was the air monitors? Because there was a fire. Okay, now you have no extinguishers, improper training management. Why do they pass out? Asphyxiate, not really. So why did they continue entering? There was no testing. Did they have testing equipment? We don't know. Was the testing equipment, were people trained on the testing equipment? Did they have air monitors on them, or was there somebody doing a testing before entering that space to find out what they were dealing with? Who was it that was talking about the space in the boat? And it was oxygen, but it wasn't enough oxygen in that space. It was at 15% instead of 19.5%. So it made people pass out, but they didn't kill them. So they didn't know what they were dealing with. They were dealing with oxygen, it's just not enough. Here, they're dealing with CO2. What is CO2? CO2 is an asphyxiant. It displaces oxygen. It's heavier than oxygen. It pushes it out into space. So enough of that, you know, when you get down around 12%, 10% oxygen, you start dying, or you don't recover. So they didn't have testing, no testing because management didn't have it. This would solve this. Hence the next workshop. So this is a non-routine task. So when you teach confined space, I can teach confined space all day long, but unless I know what space you're entering, it's at a 10,000 foot level. Okay, these are what confined spaces are. Not meant for continuous occupancy, has restricted means of egress and ingress, and could possibly have an atmosphere problem. You know, those are confined spaces, and then you get permit required confined spaces, but you can't teach it. So you have to have one of these to determine what's going on here.
Do you guys have confined spaces you enter as a company?
Offices?
Yeah.
Insulation, attics, crawl spaces.
That's where you see it most of the time. Dustin, you don't have any, do you? Windows installs?
No, I don't think so.
Fireplaces.
Every now and again.
Every now and again in an attic situation.
Every now and again. But usually on that, there's a hole because we're running the pipe through the roof, so we're in attics for remodels, but we're going through the roof, so we do get some air down in there through the, plus the access from the downstairs into the attic is still more.
The closest thing we have would be the spray foam, where that's totally, everybody.
Yeah, and you're spraying stuff that's off gases, ammonia. So the pit has quite a few different things. In answer to what Levi talked about before the break, was there can be more than one root cause. You have, it looks like a culture problem here. We have employees just going ahead blindly following leads when they shouldn't be. You don't have the right equipment. You don't have a fire watch after a fire. No fire extinguishers. No hot work permits, probably. This is what's pretty large.
I find interesting on this one is the next day he had a water hose to cool off a hot environment, but he couldn't use the water hose the day before to extinguish the fire. Water typically puts fire out, just science.
Pretty good stuff. Yeah. Any questions on this? We got any questions from the audience?
He did a good job drilling down a couple different potential root causes there.
Does this make sense?
Totally.
So the reason we do injury investigations, accident investigations, incident investigations is so it doesn't happen again. So when we have these cases, and hopefully they're just incidences, and we eliminate injuries, please help me do this. We should be investigating those. We should be investigating trends and stuff like that. And then the other one is, I have in the past received, I talked about the one, oh, he's a nice guy, he's not going to do it again, was the injury investigation. The other one was, the person wasn't aware of their surroundings. Does that really help us? As a matter of fact, it's in, where's the accident report, incident report that everybody fills out? Yeah, right there. It shows in there, one of the scenarios is situational awareness. I'm going to eliminate that. That's not going to be an option. Failure to anticipate.
That's the one I hate.
Yeah.
I don't like that
one. We're going to eliminate that on there because
Thank you.
that is a cop-out.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that. The other one was failure to anticipate, and then the other one was lack of situational awareness. It's not on there. Right, took that out. So those aren't really. They don't solve the problem. Okay? So when you do that, one of the things that can help us out is job hazard analysis on non-routine tasks. So the pit is a non-routine task. How often do you go down and dig a cardboard baler out of embedded concrete? Probably not very often, unless you're an excavation group. But still, every excavation is going to be different, so you have to do a job hazard analysis. The ladder, we're on ladders all the time. That should be routine tasks. We should have our people inspecting ladders before they use them. They should be setting them up themselves. The one that happened in Magic Valley, the guy came in, the ladder was already set, and it was set on a cord or a hose. So when he got up to the top of it, it moved on it because he was putting insulation. And he was on the third step down from the top, so everything was fine there. But when he started moving like that, the ladder became wobbly, and he landed on his head with stitches and a concussion and all that good stuff. So luckily it wasn't worse, So, but he didn't inspect the ladder. He didn't, he had a housekeeping issue. The place was a mess when we investigated. So, what was the other one? Oh, when you ask, this is another one's happened recently. We asked somebody who normally doesn't do it, hey, who's doing inventory? you guys just finished your inventory. You guys got inventory coming. Twin Falls is doing theirs this week. How dangerous is inventory? You're walking around going like this, right? How dangerous is this? 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that dangerous?
For Brandon, it is.
Can be.
I wasn't
Walk
going
down,
to
fall down the stairs.
So we send a person out to do inventory. Never done. Doesn't work in the yard. Has no training whatsoever. Nobody walking with that person saying, watch out for this and that. You got trip hazards here. You need to be in this position so that you don't trip, things like that. We need to look at those things. So the investigation came back and said, was not aware of the surroundings. Okay. Had buggered up wrist. Probably will be that way forever. Okay. Because it's just the way it is. But we could have prevented that by having some training. Did I hit them all? I think so. The Moffat was the other one. Had a Moffat tip over a couple weeks ago on that side of the state, the cold side, and it was too high. It was trying to get over the cab of the truck, and Moffats are a rough terrain forklift, but they're only on 3 wheels. Very unstable. You got a real big problem with stability triangle on those things. The higher you go, the more unstable it becomes. So the questions were asked in that investigation: if the 40-foot I-joists that were being carried were within capacity, if they were at 5 foot, pulling off the trailer, backing up, turning at 5 foot, would that have tipped over? No. At 8 foot, would it have tipped over? No. But at 12 foot, trying to get over the cab of the truck, it tipped over. We were lucky, it just tipped over. The Moffat, nobody was hurt. The guy was wearing a seatbelt, didn't get crushed, and things like that. Ended up with a flat iron on thing. But also had to get another truck out there, another Moffat, pick it up, and you had a 6-hour delay on there, on top of possible other damage. So in that investigation, it was, he hit a bump. Was the first cause of that tip over. Yeah, you're going to hit a bump. You're on a job site. You're always going to hit a bump. I mean, it's the nature of the beast. So he didn't do a get out look, and he was lifting the load too high. So, yes.
So that I understand, we took our own truck and our own equipment out to pull them off and back over.
Yeah.
Was that the proper thing to do?
Probably not.
Because were we trained to do that?
No.
We should have
Should have a record.
go out.
Yeah, would have been best. So yeah, use a Moffat and another truck.
I mean, it worked, but still,
It's another non-routine task. You could have had it very well having the 2 Moffats laying on their sides. Yeah, spooning. So, all right. I didn't get to do the pig joke for that. All right. No, we won't. Any questions? You got anything from the audience?
I'll give him just a few seconds.
Okay. So now what are we going to do? We're going to go out there and change the world, right? One slice at a time. It's like a battleship in a bathtub. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen flip of the switch. So we got to remember to implement corrective actions and follow up on those actions. Make sure that whatever we do is right. We have talked about granite here at the break on what we're doing there with drilling holes and sawing or grinding silica stuff in the field. How are we going to prevent those things from getting worse? Track completion of your corrective actions. So if you tell me that we're going to implement a shroud for certain grinding activities, we need to have a timer. We just can't say we're going to do it and then forget about doing it because it won't get done. Okay, so we need to follow up on this. Share information about it. We've gotten really good at that. I mean, I'm not the author of everything. I mean, I get a lot of stuff from all you guys on what happened here, and I spread that out and let everybody else know because it's nice to share that information. We're one big, it's Franklin at the top of the business card, right? So we should be sharing that information. and critique those processes for continuous improvement. We might hit on an idea, and the beast, is that what you're calling that card?
Yeah.
You know, that's a great idea, and it's getting better and better and better. And then when we say, you know, critique that, and as for hauling lumber, not lumber, build around. So trying to save some backs. So it's pretty cool. And is that on Facebook? Is that available on Facebook yet? The beast, that video.
So those are two different ones, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. He needs one for his underwriter. Copy of that. Please. Now we might get another 50,000 off of our premium.
Deal.
Any questions from the cyber world?
Nobody spoke up.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. I know I had this thing scheduled till 2 o'clock. Hey, you just gained 2 hours. Okay.